What is up, everybody? It's an Overreaction Monday show here on Orange Was Live. I don't know where Anwar is. Had some camera issues. We were running late. I thought, let's just get this thing started and we'll see how it goes. Like, comment, subscribe to the page. This show brought to you by the guys over at rogueshop.com. Use that promo code OrangeBloods for Texas's home for legal CBD, THC, and so much more. I was going to show you my Rogue products, which are sitting nearby, but they're not sitting nearby. I don't know where they went. Guys, like, comment, subscribe to the page, do the notifications thing, and by all means, jump into the Specs chat and chat away. I see you, Chris Bennett. I see you, Money B. I see you, Rodolfo. I see all of you. Hope you guys are having a great Monday as we get things started. We're talking Arch Manning today. And surely Anwar will join me. Surely. But if not, we will hold this thing down. Chris Bennett says Anwar is taking the baseball loss hard. Do I get in? You know what? I hate to be a tease and drop an Arch Manning name drop and then talk about the baseball loss. Let's just say this. It happened. Kudos to UTSA. They were, for my money, clearly the better team this weekend. Does that mean they're the better team? I don't know. They were the better team this weekend, and they did all the little things that Texas baseball didn't do. It's a massive disappointment for Texas baseball. It may cost the university's athletic department the Director's Cup when it's all said and done. You can't win the SEC and go out in regional play at Texas, a school that defines every baseball season by whether or not it gets to Omaha at a minimum. It's a disappointment. And Jim Schlossnagle will learn, like, you can do a lot of things in the regular season to get people excited, but if you lose in the postseason short of the minimum goals, it just kind of is what it is. And, I think Texas baseball's got a lot in front of it. Mike White and the softball program are in the national semifinals, and it takes steps to get there. I think the Longhorn baseball team kind of regressed to the mean. They dealt with injuries. They didn't play well. And here we are. No need to make excuses. It just has to be better. This season showed some promise. It's not a massive disappointment when you win an SEC regular season, but regular seasons don't define success for Texas baseball. And if you want to go into my Twitter mentions and argue with me on that, knock yourself out. There's been like 3 people who are like, no, it was a successful season. And it's like, no, it really wasn't. Texas baseball judges itself a little bit like Ohio State football or Georgia football. Winning a conference championship is nice, but they got conference championships. They determine success by other things. And if you're Texas baseball, you're not dropping the standards because you have a new coach. They got to play better. As it relates to Arch Manning, I found myself, and I'm so mad that Anwar's not here right now. I found myself thinking about quarterbacks this weekend. I started thinking about Arch specifically. There were a couple of things I was thinking about Arch. It ultimately led me to the discussion, and I'm curious, all of you, and Lane, no, I don't think that Anwar is still at the beach. He's in his studio. He's having a weird camera thing where like half of his screen was covered up with like a black curtain, it almost looked like. So he was rebooting his computer to try to fix the camera, and I don't know if that was going to work or not, but he just never came back. But he's not in Destin. He may wish he was in Destin, but he's not in Destin. Here's what I want to see everybody talk about in the Specs chat. I want everybody's perspective of this. I think we know what the ceiling for Arch Manning is as a player. By God, he's a former number 1 overall prospect. Those guys typically end up being first-round draft picks, except for recent ones, right? There's Mr. And your camera's better.
It's all on me today. It is all on me. There was a little switch up here, Catch, that turns it on and off, and it was halfway. And so that ended up being the problem.
People thought you were on the beach.
I wish.
That's what I said.
wish.
That's what I said. He wishes he was at the beach.
I
So,
wish.
Anwar, I paid all the bills. I set it all up.
Let's do it.
You literally walked in at the right time. I'm asking everybody in the Specs chat. Oh, Rodolfo, I'm not putting that on there. What's the floor for? I feel like we know what the ceiling is. The ceiling is that Arch Manning is the best quarterback in the country. He wins the Heisman. Texas wins the national championship. He's the number one pick in the 2026 draft. That is his highest upside. What's his floor? Because you and I have had a lot of conversations about young quarterbacks making starts and the lessons they have to learn. I don't think Arch Manning is immune to that. I think there will be lessons, and he'll be making his first career road start and his first career start on the road against a ranked team when they go play Ohio State. Like, he's still checking boxes. Yeah. But over the course of this season, we think the floor for Arch is what exactly?
I don't know how to quantify it without putting numbers to it, Catch. But I think the floor for Arch is Quinn Ewers kind of production. Like, I think that's the realistic floor. I don't know how to.
That's a good floor though. That gets you in the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like,
yes, right. But it is good. But with more excuses than Quinn, right? Because of all the things that you just mentioned, right? Because at the end of the day, there are growing lessons that every quarterback needs to go through, and it's almost crazy to act like he'll be immune to that. He will have growing pains. He will have a game where there's going to be multiple interceptions that are thrown.
You know what I'm thinking, right, Anwar?
One.
The Quinn will never have another bad game proclamation. Yeah. I won't do that with Arch. You know, like, I think he's going to have big things happen, but he's not immune. None of them are. His uncles weren't.
No.
But there will be a game this season where he throws a couple of picks, has a bad game. Texas probably loses the game, or if they're playing somebody who's outmanned, it ends up being a closer game than maybe a 17-point spread would indicate. But he got to learn just like everybody else does, Anwar.
Yes, and that, I think, and that's for me, Catch, is kind of the biggest. And I see that Lane came in with the $20 super chat, so I'll wrap up my thought on this. My biggest concern for Arch, Catch, going into the season is I don't think enough people factor in that he might look human at times and what that looks like. Because I think everyone is just assuming that he's just going to come in and just be 10 times better than Quinn ever was, lead this team to a national championship, and that's all she wrote. It's like, well, he does open up against Ohio State. Like, there is a possibility of certain things. Like, there is a difference when teams get to game plan for you and they do have some film on you and they start realizing what your deficiencies may or may not be. You still do play in the SEC. You still have to go on the road, not only Ohio State, Florida, Georgia, right? I mean, look, you still have those tough games that are ahead of you where to act like there will be no bumps in the road and everything's going to be flawless. It's going to throw for 4,000 yards, 40 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and win a Heisman. I don't see it, even if now. It's not to say he won't be great in college at some point. It is not to say, Catch, that a year or two from now, he's the number one overall pick. You and I are convinced that whenever he comes out in the draft, he's the number one overall pick. I don't give a damn who's on the board. He's the number one, unless you're a GM who wants to get fired. Unless you're the GM who
wants to let you keep your job if a Manning misses. Like, how are you to know?
Couldn't see it coming. No, real quick, Lane. Who wants to Catch? You're the owner, and I'm the GM, and I'm like, hey, look, I know this guy will put butts in the seat. I know he's going to make you rich. I know merchandise sales are going to go through the roof. I know suite sales are going to go through the roof. I know TV, we're going to be on TV all the time. We're a bad team, but we're going to be on TV all the time. Like, we're going to be internet. I know this could literally bring you millions and billions of dollars. But hear me out. There's this offensive lineman. You're fired.
Yeah,
Okay,
for real.
okay.
Lane brings up a good $20 super chat. Thank you, Lane, for getting us started on a Monday. Hot damn with $20. Arch will have less time to read and process the good defenses this year because our offensive line's inexperience. He'll have to be faster going through his reads. Lane, you're bringing up one of the things I wrote about in my 10 thoughts from the weekend that I just found myself thinking about the quarterbacks this season. And Anwar talked about it's hard to quantify what it means to say this is what the floor is going to look like. One of the things I found myself thinking about is, Anwar, how many times have you had if I gave you $1,000 for every time a form or fashion of this conversation took place so far this offseason, which is, I don't know about these wide receivers and if they're as good as the ones that Texas has had since last year. I don't know if the running backs are as good as they were last year because they don't have Jaden Blue's explosiveness. And I don't know if they're as good at tight end because they don't have Gunnar Helm coming back, who was replacing Jatavian Sanders, and they don't have one of those guys. And I don't know if this offensive line is anywhere near as good as last year's when you take away Kelvin Banks. And, I don't know if this offense can be as good as last year's that had 7 2025 NFL draft picks on it. And then at the end of saying, these are my reservations about the offense going into the next season. And oh, by the way, I don't know about Steve Sarkisian and his red zone play calling, right? When all of that gets said, the response is, yeah, but man, Arch got this. Arch going to make everything better, make the running backs better. The run game's going to be better because Arch is on the field. Passing game's going to be better because Arch is on the field. Red zone offense is going to be better because Arch is on the field. It's amazing to me. I'm not saying I wildly disagree with that. I'm not even saying that they're wrong. They might be right. That's what great quarterback play does do. Like, if you have it, it does elevate all of those things. It's crazy to me, though, that Texas is either going to be a preseason number 1 or number 2 this year, and it's all on Arch's ability to show up day one and, quite frankly, be better than Quinn Ewers was a year ago. That's the step Texas needs at the quarterback position if the offense is going to take steps forward when everywhere else it seems like they've taken a step back on that side of the ball, if even a smidge.
Catch, well, to answer your question, then I'd have that kind of Bitcoin money. Bitcoin blew up, and all these people who never told you about it were cashing out. You're like, wait a second, how come you didn't tell me about this? That's the kind of money I think I'd be kind of having and kind of rolling in at that point. Yes, but here's a flaw to that, right, Catch? There's a little bit of a flaw. There's a way around it. So there is a way around it. But there is, you and I would agree last season that you felt like Shador Sanders and Cam Ward were the best quarterbacks in college football. Would you say that?
No, I never thought that about Shador.
Who was your number 2?
I just didn't think it was a good year. I don't know.
Okay. Even you take Shador out of it.
I thought a guy like, I thought Will Howard was better last year than Shador Sanders.
Okay.
I thought Dylan Gabriel is probably in the conversation a little bit. And you know how I feel about Dylan Gabriel. I don't think any of these dudes are truly great players. And I honestly won't argue. If someone said, I think Shador Sanders was the second best quarterback in college football, I would go, okay, I kind of get it. But I think it's just revealing about this. I wouldn't take Shador Sanders, what I know about him, and he's good. I wouldn't take him right now over DJ Lagway or Arch Manning, even though those guys aren't as proven and haven't had anywhere near the success thus far. It's a little bit of the Quinn Ewers conversation. Those two guys are supposed to be great at some point. And the struggle that you come with is, well, would you just take very, very good? Because Texas probably wins the national championship with Shador Sanders. Like, whatever I think Shador wasn't, I do think he was better than Quinn. And Texas didn't need much last year. A little bit more rocket fuel, and they get through Ohio State and they beat Notre Dame in the national championship. And so it makes the quarterback conversation, because if someone said, would you take Quinn Ewers' 2024 season for Arch in 2025? No injuries, though. You're just getting Quinn Ewers over 12 games. Would you take that if you were the Texas coaches? Then there's a part of me that says, yeah, man, because that might mean you're right back in the national semifinals again. But it also might mean, does that mean our offense doesn't score 17 points or more in any of the biggest games of the season outside of Clemson? It's not an easy question, I think, to answer.
So that kind of the answer becomes revealing, because if Cam Ward was the best quarterback in college football last year, what did that mean for Miami in the playoffs when it was all said and done, right? And so that's where it goes back to the conversation that you're having, where it's like, well, if all we need is just badass quarterback, and we could just ignore everything else. What I was trying to get at is, you could have a badass quarterback, but you could still have a team that doesn't make the playoffs, right?
The badass roster actually matters more than the badass quarterback.
And that's where I go to. So there's the cheat code a little bit where you can say, all right, yeah, at the end of the day, they still have a really good roster. You might be able to get around some of those things. But to act like all you just need is just this one component and nothing else, the one component won't necessarily. And look, we've heard it. It's like, well, yeah, the offensive line may not be as good, but he's a scrambler. Like, the receivers may not be what they were last year, but he can throw a better ball than Quinn can. Like, you can go down the list of things, but at the end of the day, it is it. Can I give you a hot take as relates to this subject, though?
Yes. It's an overreaction Monday.
I'm going to give you my overreaction Monday hot take, I think, on this one. And I think some people in the building might be insulted by what I'm going to say, but I don't necessarily hope. I hope they can, when they play the game.
That's my job, Onward.
When they play the game of telephone, I hope they get it as close to right as possible. Sark needs Arch to succeed very badly, because listen, this is not a question of Sark and who he is as a quarterback coach. He's established himself, right? So I'm not saying he needs to prove himself. But since he's been at Texas, he's only been able to generate good quarterbacks, and he hasn't had a great one yet. And the one thing we want, and the one thing Texas fans want, and I think the one thing they expect, is to have great quarterback play. Like, just great. And they've been good to below average. Now, if you go back, Catch, he inherits Casey Thompson, he inherits Hudson Card. So we won't necessarily hold that against him per se, right? But at the end of the day, he starts Hudson Card, and then after 2 weeks, instantly regrets that decision. He puts in Casey Thompson, gets the most out of Casey Thompson that you can get out of him at that point. But that really didn't mean much, okay? With all due respect to Casey. Then you move into the Quinn Ewers era, and that was kind of supposed to be like the defining moment there. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of questions about Quinn and who he was or wasn't. And after 3 years, he ends up being a 7th round pick, barely selected in the NFL draft. You had Malik Murphy in there for a second, brief cup of coffee, but that really didn't yield anything. He was a backup. He transferred. It is what it is. He needs to have Arch be the one that hits, just to shake off this kind of meh streak of quarterbacks that he's had. he needs Arch to just be great, because that's what we expect out of him, to be that guy who produces badass great quarterbacks. And I think Arch ends up being the guy that I would say he's ultimately defined by, because that's harsh, that's an overreaction, but it would be nice to kind of break it up though.
I mean, whatever happens with Arch, it will be on Sarkisian's tombstone. We've said that. This is the guy that, for better or worse, and it is the good thing about Quinn Ewers, is that if Arch Manning develops into the number one pick in the draft, Sark won't ever have to say it out loud. But we'll all just look at Quinn and go, well, that was Quinn. That was on him. If he'd been that dude, Sark would have got it out of him. It's unfair, I think. But, that's I don't make the rules any more than when I said if you're Texas baseball and you lose in the regional, the rules around here that the season's defined by getting to Omaha and then winning in Omaha. And that if you don't make it to Omaha, then it's not a successful season, no matter how good the regular season is. I don't make these rules. And I don't make these rules with Sarkisian and the quarterbacks either. But Anwar's right. Because if he hits with Arch, it is the defining moment of his career. He is the quarterback that he'll always be remembered for. It might be the quarterback that NFL teams come to him and say, if it's that good, Anwar, if he's really cooking with grease in the next year or two with Arch, and they get over the hump and win a national championship, the team that drafts Arch will try to hire Steve Sarkisian. Now, he may say, look, man, I'm good. I just won a championship. I have this where I want it. I don't ever plan to leave Texas. But because of the relationship between him as a play caller, it's not much different than Lincoln Riley. Yeah. I mean, Lincoln Riley, when Caleb Williams was going pro, if they had really had that kind of relationship, which I'm not sure they ended up having, I think Lincoln Riley he'd have had some job offers.
Yeah.
And he would have had a chance, I think, to be in a position to potentially coach Caleb Williams. So you're not wrong. This defines everything for Sarkisian, and I think he probably wants it that way. I will say, while Sark talks about what it's like to be Arch Manning in that skin in such a way that you can feel there's a little bit of protectiveness from Sark towards Arch, that, man, in a lot of ways, nobody should ever have to completely. And Lane, I see it. I'll put it up there. We'll get to it in just a second. I need to respect the $20. And you're not wrong. The defense will probably be Arch's best friend in 2025. It could be the thing that defines the season again, like it did a year ago. That they got to the semifinals because of Kwiatkowski's defense and not an offense that had 7 guys drafted on it. But he doesn't ever put his foot on the brake. I guess all gas, no brakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
With slowing down what Arch could do this season.
Yeah.
He has not once said, guys, I know he's being talked about as maybe being the best quarterback in the SEC, but guys, I'm seeing it in practice. Slow down. We're going to be really good, but maybe don't go crazy on the quarterback stuff. That's not happening. In fact, behind the scenes, it's like everybody's going out of their way to add as much onto Arch's shoulders as possible.
Yeah. There would be, I would have more caution and just like.
That's what we're doing today on having a little bit of caution.
Just give him some windows here, because it at the end of the day, like, Catch, when we look at Arch from last season, and he even mentioned it. I want to say when he started talking about I don't know if I interviewed him during the Peach Bowl or one of those postseasons, maybe Cotton Bowl. I don't know what it was, but he even pointed out, Catch, that sure, maybe he had a good game here or there, but he also points out that the La Monroe thing happened, and Arch didn't look good against La Monroe. I mean, yes, they won the game. They killed the team, right? But it is what it is. But, I mean, he threw 2 interceptions. His QBR was 135.4. Like, but we don't flip out over that because they're like, well, yeah, he's a young quarterback, right? That happened. Sure, UTSA happened. He came in off the bench, but then La Monroe happened in the start. Now Mississippi State, he plays a little bit better, but we all agree that Mississippi State's a horrible program, right? So, but we understand. But if you talk to people behind the scenes, I mean, they just act like Arch is the thing that cures all woes and all wounds and everything. And it's like, well, he might be pretty good, and he might end up really being great. But I would also again caution to say that he will have human moments. As you point this out, I say this as a person who was a quarterback guy, and two was like, the Quinn's going to be great, never going to have another bad game, blah 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 blah. And it's like, well, that was a dumb take, and Arch is going to have those moments of growing and developing, and that's why even the people closest to him, even his family, would say there's a sweet spot of games that they feel like he needs to play in order to be NFL ready, and that there needs to be like 30 starts is what's supposed to be that sweet spot of like you need to get 30 in because of all the things that they understand that a quarterback is going to go through. They understand that, and then it's hard for Texas fans to understand that too. That there's probably a good and a bad of the schedule, Catch, because the bad part is or good. It's like they start up against Ohio State, and that's going to be whatever. But then when they go into that stretch of 3 games where they're just playing nobodies, and Arch is looking like the second coming of the third coming of the Manning family, then the expectations are going to go through the roof, and then you're going to go back into the SEC play, and and then it's going to get a lot tougher.
There's just no getting around the fact that Arch by the time his last season rolls around, or his last game, he'll just be a different guy than he was in the beginning.
Yeah.
I think the most damning thing that you'd probably say about Quinn is that I do think he made progress. It wasn't like the same guy in 2022 was the same guy in 2024. But I don't know that he made a lot of progress. He made progress, and then I kind of feel like 2024 and 2023 were pretty similar in a lot of ways. And there was never that – he never had the Michigan game, and then that's just who he was moving forward. It was almost like he was chasing ghosts. We've even talked about it this morning on Orange Bloods, where it was like, if you and I are having, if any of us are having a quarterback conversation, and it always goes back to, yeah, but that Michigan game, or yeah, but that Alabama game, or yeah, that first Alabama game in Austin, if he'd stayed on the field, what would have happened that day? There are those moments of either flashes or superstardom or flat out superstardom moments where he was. You mentioned the Big 12 championship game on Orange Bloods earlier today. He's walking around with a belt like he was the MVP of that game. And yet the performance levels consistently were at a place that you always had to go back and reference some game in the past to talk about Quinn at his best. And
it's very Sam Ellinger-esque, by the way.
Very Sam-ish. The Sam of 2020 was not better than the Sam of 2018. And so it's almost like, but there was a jump from freshman year to second year. Mm-hmm. And Quinn made that jump as well. And then I just think there's a really tough jump that goes once you get a little bit of experience, and then you have to go from either being like good to very good or the step to great is so hard to take. And and I think there's an expectation that Arch will take it this season, but how could anybody have any idea when that might occur? Because it might not be in Columbus, and that might not even mean they lose that game. That game could be a little bit like the semifinal game was. It might be 14-14 with 5 minutes to go, and neither offense or quarterback is the star of the day. But the schedule lightens up. They basically play one tough game a month after they get through September. So, they got a game in October, they got a game in November, and along the way, Texas only has to win one of those 3 road games to get into the playoffs. If they hold serve and beat all the teams they're going to be double-digit favorites against. So he's only got to get one to get into December, and then to be the best version of himself at that point is all that matters. Because if Quinn had been good against Ohio State in January, let's say he'd been Alabama good against Ohio State, and Texas wins that game, Anwar, Quinn gets drafted where? Forget about the national championship game. He has a moment, one moment against a really good team, Ohio State. Like, that's what he didn't have a year ago, really. So what if he had just one, but it had been in that moment? Where do you think Quinn gets drafted?
I'll take this, by the way, I'll take this off the screen for you. If you can put the rogue thing back up. I know it's kind of
because I think he goes second day minimum. That is how fine the margins are on something like this. If he does the Tuscaloosa performance against Ohio State,
yeah, I think it makes a huge difference, because now all of a sudden, I'm the NFL GM that's watching this game, and or a coach that's watching this game, and now it makes a difference at that point. So he probably goes higher.
You just needed to see him one time in a game like that towards the end of the year.
Yeah, he might get drafted, but he gets drafted ahead of Dylan Gabriel.
Oh my! I'm telling you, Anwar, he goes high.
Yeah.
He does not make it past day 2, but he just didn't have. That Alabama game was just too long ago, and there were the injuries and there were more things going on. I know, but he just needed to give them a sexy performance, and it didn't happen. And say la vie, like, that's just the way that it went. But I do think. I think it's the guy who's often the most critical of Quinn and his Texas experience. It's interesting, though, that to be able to confess, man, he just needed one 60-minute performance. And that it didn't happen is kind of shocking. Because if you had told me either out of the Alabama game that, man, you won't ever do that again against a really good team in that kind of setting, I don't know that we would have believed it. I think we thought that was a start of something. And I know after the Michigan game, I walked out of that going, because I kind of poo-pooed the Alabama game. Like, it was a great team performance, and Quinn was really good. Don't make me mistake. Quinn never did that again. And the deep balls has never been his thing. And on that night, my God, he completed a couple of deep balls. The Michigan game, that was the Quinn Ewers for me that I thought it can be replicated. That is him in his wheelhouse. And I thought after that game, holy shit, he's got the glow. Watch out. You never would have been able to convince me coming out of that game in Ann Arbor. Well, that's as good as it's ever going to get. And we ain't ever going to see really that performance against a top 15 defense ever again. It won't even get close, because they could have scored 50 that day in Ann Arbor, and they took their foot off the brake, because when you're winning on the road by 3 touchdowns against that team, like, just don't make a mistake. And they didn't. They just ran the ball and controlled clock and punished Michigan. But golly, I really think, as far away as it feels like Quinn was, I do think, what happens if it's not even like a great game, but what if in the last 5 minutes and into overtime against Ohio State, if it even goes to overtime, he puts together 2 incredible. I'm telling you, it's amazing to me, the fine margins that I think end up deciding how we remember him. And I bring all this up because I wonder if it will come to that for Arch, or will we get to it and the final games won't matter as much as the totality of a 30-game career or a 25-game career or whatever it ends up being, where he's just so good all the time that you'll point to singular moments and it'll be the inverted Quinn. Instead of talking about the good game as an isolated instance, you'll talk about the bad game, and you just hope those don't pop up when the season's on the line.
Yeah, I mean, for the sake of a Texas fan, you would have hoped that you're not having the same conversations of comparisons, right? Like the same way we're comparing Sam and Quinn, and that's kind of a pretty close / fair comparison, and in very odd ways. We remember Sam differently because he wasn't a 5-star as the number one guy coming out of high school, so just kind of ends up being is what it is, right? It was just all right. He's you don't look at it as a disappointment thing. I think with Arch though, I think that the nice optimism as relates to him is that you can do certain things that Quinn can't do. As far as his feet is concerned, like you can see that no one's saying he's going to be a dual threat guy. Like let's not be crazy, right? But Sark's not going to go away from that. But when there is pressure to be had, and pressure is coming, that we do know that he does have escapability, and that will help him a lot. I don't know if he's going to be sometimes as jittery in the pocket as Quinn could somewhat be. And look, if you're Quinn, you're not the biggest guy in stature. So yeah, when you get injured a lot. So yeah, you might be, be looking around a little bit. Arch is a little bit more of a bigger guy. So he will, he'll probably be able to stand in there, a little bit more. Now he did get dinged up. He did admit that, what was it, the Ohio State game or so when which one? I think that was Ohio State. He took a pretty good shot in the postseason. So there's that, but that's why I go back to, for Quinn and of course it's Sark, right? Like Arch and Sark rather, like having that kind of next step for Arch probably makes a huge difference for him. And I also think if you're Arch though, the one thing that could end up being, I think, a huge benefit for Arch that Quinn never really had a chance to do. Like Quinn never really sat and learned. He just never sat and learned. Everything for Quinn was always in the fast lane. Like it was high school. Hey, we're rocking and rolling.
He did have a semester at Ohio State.
But even that, like that's a brief semester. Catch he still had to use Waze to get around the city because he was barely there for.
But I've lived in the Woodlands for a few years now. I still use Waze.
Well, so, I use Waze a lot just because I know where traffic's building up. Honestly,
I hate my wife. I could be going home,
and
she wants Waze up. I'm like, I don't need Waze to tell me how to get home. I got this, and she does not. That's how little respect my wife has for me.
I just like the traffic buildup thing. Like, hey, just in case I know how to get certain play. Like, even not going to let's say Q2 or something like that.
She wants me to follow Waze.
You said what?
She always wants me to follow Waze.
Wow, just everywhere. Just like even to like the grocery store.
And sometimes I know how to get to places better than Waze. I do.
Well, sometimes Waze does be doing some really ridiculous directions, though. Like sometimes they're having you like go left, right, and then go back in a circle. You're like, yo, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, because right now I do not need to go on this.
But Waze will take your sponsorship money if you want to get into the Orange Bloods live game. We use Waze a lot. We're just saying sometimes it gets a little wonky. All right. Let's wrap it up, Anwar. Because I see people complaining in the chat. And it's like, you guys amaze me. Like Sailor Joe's like, this is rehashing the conversation we have every week. That's just not true, Anwar, Sailor Joe. Now, Anwar and I did recently do a conversation that had some quarterback discussion in it. We've stayed away from the quarterbacks a lot. And oh, by the way, I don't know if you know this. When the magazines come out this month, they're all going to have Arch on them. Like, you can't beat us up for talking about the quarterback position too much because it's the fucking quarterback position and it's Arch Manning. And there are 130 other programs in America right now that wish they had a YouTube show where their favorite college football team was being talked about being quarterbacked by a Manning. Come on, Sailor Joe. Don't nitpick us on a Monday.
Do you just before we go then, because you're part of you're not in charge of rankings, but you're part of the system here of it, right? Part of the machine. That's the word I'm looking for. Part of the machine. You would do you believe that he'll live up to the 5-star stuff? Because there are some people who did rankings, Catch, who did question if Arch was truly a 5-star. He didn't play in the camps, those kind of things that, he didn't play against what they would consider to be premier competition in high school. And so there were some people who thought that 5-star actually wasn't well-deserved.
If he's not the number 1 pick in the draft when he comes out, then he was ranked too high.
Okay. Number 1 pick in the draft.
That is the projection for him. If he doesn't make it, like a spot or two doesn't make him a bust. I just don't know that it means he quite lived up to the hype. But I mean, I'm not going to quibble over taking 2nd or 3rd or 4th, or like Vince Young was taken 5th in the draft. So that kind of status would be fine. But if we're being completely honest, like those are the expectations. Something went wrong if he's a mid-level first-round draft pick. If he's the 10th pick in the draft, then he ended up not being the guy that we thought he was. In fact, I need to marinate a little bit on what it would mean for Arch to be the 10th pick in a draft. What would he have not done, but still done, that would make it so that 9 teams passed on him? I don't know the answer. I'm serious. I'm really going to have to think what would have to happen for that to happen. And
I mean, Cleveland not being in the top 10, like, what are we talking? I mean, like,
I don't know. Like, again, because if Vince Young goes 5th in the draft, and you'll look back and you go, well, Reggie Bush was number 1, or Mario Williams was number 1, and it was a weird draft.
Yeah.
And in the end, they went right. Mario Williams should have been drafted over Vince Young when it was all said and done. But Vince goes 5th, and it didn't feel loopy, crazy. But if Vince had gone 10th, we'd all went, whoa. Teams really don't think he's that good. And I think teams do think that about Arch. And I think he'll get benefits of the doubt that other guys wouldn't if they're needed, which speaks to, I think what the expectations are for him. And, the funny thing is, the thing about the Manning thing is you'll hear people make that. I think Rivals.
By the way, it looks like he went 3rd. I'm looking at it. It says Mario Williams, Reggie Bush, Vince Young.
That's right. Vince went 3rd. Sorry.
Yeah. Just want to make sure. Mario went 1st.
Yes.
Reggie went 2nd, and Vince was 3rd.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, hell, I had something profound to say. I'm sorry. I just did that to you, Anwar. I do that to you all the time. You're probably about to say something profound, and then I'll interject with commentary on top of it. And then I never think about, well, maybe I just made Anwar lose his thought, but that just happened.
I had a thought. It literally just happened with Waze. It literally just happened because we started Waze, and I was like, I felt like I had a good topic, and then we went into Waze, and then I was like, shit, I forgot what we're talking about.
Oh, dude.
So
I had something. It wasn't like profound. It was good though. And then it wasn't even you. I had it in my head 2 seconds ago, and then. Damn it. Let me remind everybody, this show brought to you by RogueShop.com. Hey, pain, anxiety, sleeplessness, a lot of things it can help with. Short-term memory, sometimes not so much.
I got another quick question for you, though.
Yes.
Going into last season, we said, and I think or maybe we didn't say, but I feel like the consensus was Texas has the advantage at the quarterback position in every game going into last season. Like, that was the kind of the consensus thought was Texas is going to be, no matter what, if you do matchups, Texas will always have the better quarterback in every game that they play. And looking into this year.
In the playoffs, did they have the better quarterback in any of those games?
No, I don't.
What do we think of Levitt, the kid at Arizona State? That's the question I'm ultimately asking, I guess.
I mean,
because I kind of poo-pooed that guy, but maybe I didn't give him enough credit.
I mean, I think we'll see where he gets drafted, but I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, he ended up being pretty damn good. I mean,
I thought the running back was good. I thought the quarterback needed to keep his mouth shut.
What's his name, Scatterboo or something?
Yeah, Shador was baller.
That guy was a freaking baller.
Yeah, man. Like that dude, I walked away going, that dude could play for Texas. I didn't walk away thinking that Levitt was on that level. But
he wasn't bad, though.
And I don't know that it feels like maybe a push in retrospect. Maybe. Kind of push-ish. I would take Klubnik over Ewers, in the performance in that game. I think validates that, although Ewers was good in that game as well. And then,
but I was thinking more of regular season, though.
Yeah, I mean, Texas had the edge in every game, right?
So do you think that happens this year?
No. Well, the only game where I don't think that might happen is it's possible that DJ Lagway at home is a quarterback edge over an Arch that we've never seen play on the road. So we need to at least leave open the possibilities that a fellow 5-star, maybe possible number 1 overall draft pick in a future season could be better on the day. Or we might get to that point in the schedule and go, Florida has a slight quarterback edge. And it might not have anything to do with Arch. It might be DJ Lagway's freaking really good. And we know going into the season that the 2 quarterbacks in the SEC with the most 2025 upside are Lagway and Manning. And that I think I think Manning's going to be first team all SEC and Lagway's second, but I wouldn't be shocked if those got flip-flopped because Lagway's seriously talented. But nobody else on the schedule has a quarterback that I think even belongs in a conversation like this. Ohio State, you might eventually get there with Julian Sayin, but I'm not quite ready to have that conversation, not in his first game as a starter.
Mm-hmm. We know how you feel about the Oklahoma quarterback, so we've already.
Yeah.
I mean, who's the next best guy? Is Marcel Reed the next best guy on?
No, and the thing is, Mateer might be. He might be second or third on the list in the regular season. But again, I think that points to Texas has entered the SEC at a time when the quarterback play and who they're getting on their schedule is pretty weak.
Yeah.
I mean, Texas knows what good quarterback play at Oklahoma looks like. And we're talking about John Mateer at a school that gave us in 5 consecutive seasons, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts. And all of those dudes, when they played, were like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's who they are going to be at the quarterback position. So, I don't know. I need to think about it. But Mateer is top 3 or 4 for sure. It's just not – I don't know. I don't know what to do with Marcel Reed. I don't know what to do with – I don't even know what to do with Julian Sayin. This is another schedule that's very friendly for the Longhorns on the quarterback front. And look, there have been years when that hasn't been the case, where it's like, oh, they're playing Jared Goff and they're playing Baker Mayfield and they're playing Geno Smith. And like there was a time when it felt like Texas, when even when they'd play Oklahoma State, it'd be like, oh, well, here comes Mason Rudolph. Like seemed like Texas was always catching the brunt end of some bad quarterbacks that the Big 12 was stacking up. The SEC just doesn't have that right now. And it's a conference, again, where Nussmeier's not on the schedule. Sellers isn't on the schedule. A couple of the guys that might give you a scare, Jackson Dart a year ago, Texas didn't have to face them. And so sometimes you catch breaks. And the first 2 years of being in the SEC, Texas gets an incredibly quarterback-friendly schedule. No way to get away from it.
Yeah. So that's where when we start thinking about how everything stacks up for this year and start thinking about the Arch thing, them having the quarterback edge in just about every game, where you may see Lagways might be even to a certain degree, and that's probably it, right? That's about the only one that we're looking at from a quarterback perspective. I mean, we haven't gotten to the team stuff and how, what that looks like, but I'm just talking about from a QB mano a mano, my guy versus your guy. We're saying that, hey, Arch is better than all these dudes that he'll be facing this year.
If he's not, it will be a first take talking point.
Yeah.
I mean, and that will be where Steve Sarkisian's got nowhere to hide if Arch isn't what everybody thinks he's going to be. Like with those types of expectations come great responsibility, and we'll see. Guys, we got to wrap it up. It's almost 10 o'clock here locally. Thanks to Rogue Shop again. Use that promo code OrangeBloods, and yes, get your orders in by September 1st. Let's just hope that goes away. Like,
yeah.
fingers crossed. But for Anwar Richardson and me, Jeff Ketchum, we will see you guys soon. Enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week.